All right. Good morning, everyone. This morning we want to do a little bit of pattern work here in the default 172 at a little airport in South Dakota, Yankton, South Dakota. So I thought I'd start here this morning with the airplane all shut down so you can kind of go through the startup procedures with me, and then we'll go out and we'll do a little bit of pattern work just to kind of show you how you would normally fly this aircraft in the pattern. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll start to get things fired up this morning. So typically what I'll do is turn the master on, turn the battery on to get some power going in here. And when we do that, before we get started up, we normally want to have our strobe and or our beacon on, just so we can give people around us some indication that we're going to be starting the engine. We'll go ahead and get the alternator on here too. All right, and on a cold day, and I know it happens to be cold up here in the Midwest, today I'm using real weather. On a cold day, you want to go ahead and prime it. So to do that, what you're going to do is turn the fuel pump on, and then you want to open up the mixture and the throttle all the way for a few seconds just to get fuel into the cylinders, and then you can go ahead and turn the fuel pump off. Then we can go ahead and start it. So I'm going to kind of cross this up. The starting procedure on a 172 is you want to start to crank it, and then when it fires, then you want to advance the mixture. It helps avoid flooding it, so we'll kind of do that. Okay. Okay. It fired. That was a pretty easy start. In real life, they don't particularly start that easy. Once we got stuff running, then we can go ahead and turn on our avionics. I've got a switch here that'll do that. Whoa. Okay. Get those on and powered up. Well, on the ground, I like to kind of lean it, gentleman's lean, just kind of pull it back a little bit, kind of help with keep the spark plugs from fouling out. So we're going to want to kind of get things warmed up here. We can listen to ATIS. It'll tell us how cold it is outside. The important thing on these small airplanes is you want the oil temperature here to come up into the low end of the operating range before you go. Otherwise, when you go full throttle, you can actually overboost the oil pump and destroy it. So that's not a good thing. So I kind of like to just kind of go across the panel once things are up. You know, just double check things here. The DG, we want to go ahead and get that aligned here because it's a little bit off. What are we? We're about probably 355, so let's get that set. Almost due north. I usually do the annunciator test just to make sure the lights are coming on. I'll look over here. We'll get our ATIS here.
Weather. Wind 320 at 12, visibility 9. Sky clear, temperature -23, dew point -28. Altimeter 3073.
So it's negative 23 degrees out there. It's a little chilly. And we got a pretty stiff wind out there, but it's coming almost right down the runway here. The runway here is 3-1 and the wind is out of 3-2, so should make for some interesting takeoffs and landings. Be a good day to do some short field takeoffs and landings. Okay, so I adjusted our altimeter, got it set approximately right. We're closer to 1,300 feet elevation here, so get that set. We got our DG set. Listen to ATIS. We're not really doing any navigation here today, so we don't need much with the radios or the GPSs. Got the common traffic frequency up here. There's really nobody listening. We've got our squawk code here set in our transponder. Flaps are up. The mixture is gentleman's lean. Turn the heat on. Fuel is on both tanks. Fuel cutoff is in. Static air is in. And we'll get it trimmed for takeoff. Okay, Other than that, it looks like we're kind of ready to taxi. We still have some pretty low temperature, but once we get out and do the taxi and do the run-up, that should come up. So go ahead and taxi out to 31. So Yankton traffic, Cessna 172, Sierra Pop, taxiing from the ramp out to 31, Yankton. Get a shot of a Monster Energy drink here for the flight. So interestingly enough, I purchased the Reality Expansion Kit for this airplane, but I don't know if it's because it's so cold it thinks there's snow on the ground, but it appears that I'm using skis because I can't control a thing on the ground. The nose wheel doesn't steer. I've got to figure out what's going on there. It's supposedly supposed to be a much more realistic sounds and flight characteristics than the default, but can't use it because I can't get it. I'm not good at skis. So if anybody knows how to disable the skis in the Reality Pack, please let me know. Okay, so we're sitting here at the runway. I actually built this airport in WED and mistakenly labeled this as 3013, but it's actually 31. So I have to go in and fix that. But anyway, we're sitting at the runway, so we're going to want to do a run-up here. On a run-up, typically what we do is we bring the throttle up to 1800 RPMs, and then we do a number of checks and just kind of look at the gauges across the board to make sure things look good. The run-up does a couple of things. One is it helps get some temperature into the engine. Two, make sure that we can kind of get the engine up to operating power. Make sure it's not going to shut off because we got fuel in the lines or something like that. And allows us to check to various systems like the magnetos and the alternator under a bit of load. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and go full rich on the mixture at this point. Make sure you're on the brakes, so make sure you're not moving as you bring the power up. Too many people put their head down and then taxi right into a taxi light, which can be an expensive proposition. So we bring it up to 1800 RPMs or thereabouts. Doesn't have to be exact, but just a reference point. Okay, and the first thing I do is check the mags. So we'll go over to the left mag first. What we want to see is we see a drop. We got a drop of 100 RPMs. We don't want to see any more than 150 RPMs and no more than 50 between the two. So then I come back to both. Some people just go directly over to left. I like to come back up and see it reading normal again. Then we'll go over to the right mag. And once again, we get a drop of about 100. Looks like it's dropping about 75, so we're well within specs there. Back to both. And then, of course, we want to check this. You know, our oil temperature is coming up. You see it's at the bottom of the green, so that's good. We got good oil pressure, we got good vacuum, we got good amperage sitting here. What I like to do is I shut off my alternator. I like to see a drop in the voltage, which I do. So we'll go ahead and put that on and watch it come back up. And then the other thing I like to do is turn on the pitot heat, because that puts quite a bit of load on the system and it'll show quite a bit of a charge here. So let's go ahead and do that. Yep. Alright. So that kind of shows us that the charging system is working good. We got good fuel flow, good vacuum. We got about half tank, so that's good. Just looking across here, everything looks good. We'll test the annunciators again. Looks good. We set the DG, we're at 40. So that's good. We got the altimeter set, our radios are set. So we can go ahead and bring the power back to 1000 now. Our idle. Okay, flaps are up. We don't need flaps for takeoff. Fuel tank is set to both. Fuel cutoff is in. Trim is set. So I think we're pretty much ready to go. Okay, so just a quick briefing on what we're going to be doing here. So we're going to be departing runway 31 in Yankton. We'll rotate at about 55 knots, which is going to come really quick given the wind coming right down the runway. We'll climb out at about 95 knots or so, 90-95 knots till we get to pattern altitude, and then we're going to do a couple patterns here. Kind of show you what that looks like, one, and then two, how to, what kind of speeds and what kind of attitude you want to try to find to hold when you're on final and trying to land. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. Yankton area traffic. Cessna 172 Sierra Pop. We're going to be departing runway 31, remaining in the pattern, Yankton. The other thing I find a bit annoying is the windshield glare on this airplane. I've got, reflections turned off in the settings, but for some reason I still get a lot of windshield glare. If somebody knows how to do that or fix that, let me know. Alright, let's go getting lined up. You can see we almost got 20 knots of wind, so go ahead and smoothly give full power. We just want to make sure we're getting power. We got power in the green. We're already at 55 knots, so we'll go ahead and rotate. It was pretty abrupt rotation, but alright, so we'll kind of accelerate up here to again 90-95 knots. Get it trimmed down a little bit. The nose is fighting me a bit. There we go. And we're holding runway heading. See the runway below us. We're going to be almost at pattern altitude by the time we get to the end of the runway here. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and turn. Start to pull the power back here to cruise because we're getting close to 2300 already. Go ahead and turn our crosswind here. Try to fly nice square patterns at all times, so turn crosswind perpendicular. The wind is going to blow us right at the runway, so go ahead and turn downwind. So Yankton area traffic, Cessna 172 Sierra Pop, turning left downwind for runway 31 in Yankton. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start slowing us down right now, just because with that tailwind, we're going to do this downwind pretty quick. Alright, so we're at 2300, which is pattern altitude. We got about 95 knots, so we're good for the first notch of flaps when we're ready. So we'll do a quick check here on our midfield. So we'll just make sure we got fuel both, mixture rich, fuel pump as necessary, which is off at this point. Flaps. So we're good there. So once we get a beam of the numbers or the end of the runway, what we do is we're going to pull the power back to, I'm going to pull it back to about 1700 RPM, because with that tailwind or with that headwind, it's going to take a little bit of time. Dump one notch of flaps in. You see the nose kind of wants to jump, so you got to counteract that. And then we're going to shoot for about 80 knots here initially, which should give us about a 500 foot per minute descent. Constantly trimming so we can almost fly it hands off here. You want to get it trimmed so it kind of holds that attitude. We're looking for about 45, which we're at because of that tailwind. So we're going to go ahead and turn base. Yankton area traffic, Cessna 172 Sierra Pop, turning base for 31 and yank. Come on. Oh. There we go. Alright, and on base we want to shoot for about 70 knots. Go ahead and turn final. Full flaps. Yankton area traffic. Cessna 172 Sierra Pop, turning final for 31 in Yankton. Okay, so on final we want to be shooting for about 60 knots. We're really going slow across the ground because of that 20 knot headwind. It'll take us forever to get there, so what's going to happen is we're going to probably try to drop. You see we drop right into the glide slope, so I'm going to add some power to just kind of keep us on that glide slope because we got so far to go. The glide slope is identified by those two lights on the left side of the runway. So what you're looking for on it to be on the glide slope is that you want the red on top and the white on bottom, red over white. If you get too low, you'll be red over red, and the old saying is red over red, you're dead because you're way too low. And white over white, you'll fly all night because you're way too high. So we're looking good right here on the glide slope. Holding 60 knots. coming down, about 1700 RPM, just to kind of keep us plowing toward the end of the runway. With this 20 knot headwind, we're going to be able to land pretty short. We'll see if we can do it before the second set of hash marks on the runway. I guess it'll be the third set of hash marks. Shooting, keeping the nose pointed right at the runway, looking for 60 knots, right on the glide slope. You know, as you start to get toward the end of the runway, you can start to bring the power back slowly. Start to level out here and bring the power back, and you just want to settle on the runway. There we go. That's a pretty good short field landing on the brakes. I guess I'd have to look and see how far down the runway we went, but it was that's fairly short. So normally I would have done a touch and go, but I did want to do a full stop. But to do a touch and go, you'd bring the flaps back up and you'd go full power, and off you'd go again. So we're going to do that. And bring it up to full powers. Make sure you've got good power. We're looking for 55 knots, which we're there, so go ahead and rotate, and off we go. And we'll go to about 95 knots on the climb out again. You want to use your trim bar, trim tab, trim handle, trim button, however you want to refer to it. Get you trimmed up so that you're not fighting controls. Holding runway heading. Shooting for 2300. So that was a pretty good approach and landing. Compensated for the wind pretty well. So we'll do one more, and then we'll taxi and keep this video reasonably short. So we're above 500, so I'm going to go ahead and turn crosswind here. I'll bring the power back so we don't get too fast. So one of the things that you should notice is that when you're in a turn, what happens is you lose your vertical component of lift, and so what happens is the nose wants to drop. So when you're in a turn, you got to counter that with back pressure to bring the nose up, keep you in a climb or keep you level. All right, we'll roll out hopefully on the runway heading here. Yankton area traffic, Cessna 172 Sierra Pop, entering a left downwind for runway 31 in Yankton. Okay. Go ahead and slow us down a little bit more here, so we're within flap range. Again, we're in midfield, so let's just do a quick check. We want to make sure we've got our fuel selector set to both, mixture rich, flaps is necessary, fuel pumps off. Not much what I'm doing. Okay. Beam the numbers, pull the power back, we'll do 1700 again roughly, add a notch of flaps, and shoot for 80 knots. A little trim so it's not fighting me. Okay, and we got the tailwind here, so we're gonna booking pretty good down. We're at about 45, so let's go ahead and turn base. Yankton area traffic, Cessna 172 Sierra Pop, turning left base for 31 in Yankton. We're going to slow it up to 70 knots, give it a little bit more power here, about 1700. Turn perpendicular to the runway. Alright. And we'll go ahead and turn final. Put the full flaps in and shoot for 60 knots. Yankton area traffic, Cessna 172 Sierra Pop, turning final for 31 in Yankton. Alright. So you can see now we've got the two white lights, so we're a little high. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the power back to 15, maybe even a little bit further. So in this kind of attitude, what you want to do is you want to pitch the pitch the airplane for your speed and hold that, and then your power level is actually controls going up and down, right? See, so I maintained my 60, and now we dropped into the glide slope because we took out that red light. So I'm going to go ahead and give us our power back. I don't want us to drop below the glide slope. That'll kind of just arrest our descent rate a little bit. Holding 60 knots. Bit on the glide slope. Just putting the nose right at the end of the runway. Inflate me a little bit here on the stick. Let me trim it out a little bit. Trim the nose down a little bit. Okay. A little bit of a crosswind here. Alright, we got the runway made, so we'll go ahead and start to back the power out. Level it out. And set it down. Alright, that's pretty much how you do that. Alright, we'll go ahead and taxi back to the ramp then and shut things down. And good, so this is a crossing runway here that we'll go ahead and use as a taxiway. Once you clear the runway, normally you want to bring the flaps up. Want to lean it a little bit. The crosswind, direct crosswind, it really wants to weather vane there. And Yankton area traffic, Cessna 1720, pop clear of runway 31 in Yankton. Okay, so one of the things you want to do too when you're taxiing in a pretty good stiff wind like this is you want to use your controls to make sure that the wind doesn't kind of pick you up. The adage is you want to dive away from the wind or climb into the wind. So when the wind is behind us, I'm going to push forward on the control yoke, which effectively lowers the elevator to keep the wind from getting under the elevator and kind of flipping us over our nose, which would be a bad thing. And the same thing we want to do now that we've got kind of a quartering crosswind is we want to put that aileron down a little bit to keep the wind from getting under there as well. Okay. Alright, here's our nice little hangar. We'll go ahead and flip around in it so we can back it in when we're done. Okay. Alright, so on shutdown, what you want to do is you want to pull it back to idle just to make sure that the airplane will still continue to run at idle. What can happen is for some reason the idle's set too low or there's some other problem, you pull idle on final or your other time in flight and the engine dies. So anyway, you want to put it on idle just to make sure that the engine will idle. And typically what you want to do is a mag check here, just to make sure that the mags are grounded. So what you do is you just flip it off and back. Oh, didn't do it fast enough. Typically do it off and then on, and what will happen is the engine will stumble a little bit. There we go. Got it on that time. Just to make sure that the mags are grounded so that when we do shut the key off, the engine won't be sitting there hot. And then finally, to actually shut the engine down, what you do is you pull it to idle cutoff, and that'll kill the fuel to the engine and it'll shut down. Go ahead and turn the key off at that point. Typically you take the key out and hold it up so that the line people can see that you're secured. And then we just shut everything off. Right? So avionics off, lights off, beacon off, masters off. And of course, on a windy day like this, we should put the parking brake on so we don't blow away, or make sure you're chocked or tied down. All right, folks, it's nice and cozy in here, but as soon as I open the door, that negative 23-degree wear, ooh, chilly. All right, thanks, folks, for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button, and if you want to subscribe and see more videos, that would be great too. Thanks for watching.